Hi, everybody. Nick here, coming in at the top of the episode to mention that we are talking today with Marta Gyoergy-Kessler, the director and producer of the documentary Meeting the Buddha. And I just wanted to mention that there is going to be a screening of this documentary on the West Coast in the United States. If you are interested and available, I seriously recommend checking out this documentary. It's very interesting, and we had a wonderful conversation with Marta Gyoergy-Kessler about its making and about its subject matter, and so please check it out. It will be screening at the Awareness Film Festival on Sunday, October 26th, 2025 at 10 a.m. at the Lame La Monica Film Center, 1332 2nd Street, Santa Monica, California, USA. This festival brings awareness to open eyes to some of our world's most pressing issues: ecological, political, health and well-being, and the spirit. The film festival was formed by Heal One World, and we'll be screening this documentary there for you to see. Please check it out, and if you have any questions or you need any more information, don't hesitate to reach out to us at bright.on.buddhism@gmail.com. Thanks so much, and enjoy the episode.
Before we start, we should define some terms and names we will use in the interview. Without this background, it might be difficult to follow. The Karma Kagyu lineage. This is the line of Tibetan Buddhist teachings that is the documentary's main subject. Karmapa, the head of the Karma Kagyu lineage, who consciously chooses his next reincarnation before he dies. For Western listeners, this is similar to how the Dalai Lama's reincarnations work, though we should note the Karmapa title predates the Dalai Lama by over 400 years. The documentary starts with the 16th Karmapa, named Rongjung Rigpe Dorje. Shamarpa. This is a monk designated to find the Karmapa successor after the current one dies. This is a very important figure in the religion who ensures the lineage continues as its leaders die and are reincarnated. Sometimes a Sharmapa can become the lineage holder for a variety of reasons, including when a reincarnation of the Karmapa hasn't been found, or when there's a danger to the community, such as the invasion of Tibet and the exile to India. The documentary starts during the life of the 14th Shamarpa, Mifam Chokyi Lodro. Ole and Hannah Nidal, a Danish couple who traveled to Nepal, took refuge with the Karma Kagyu lineage and worked to spread Buddhism all across the world. And now, the interview.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Bright on Buddhism. This week, we have a very special guest episode for you. We're going to be talking with Marta, who is the director and producer of a documentary that has recently started going through the rounds in the film festivals called Meeting the Buddha. And I'll let her tell all of you what it's about and introduce herself. Marta, would you like to go ahead?
Hi, everyone. I'm Marta Gyoergy-Kessler is my name. And I think I was told I'm a director and producer of the film. And more about it, the film, I hope many managed to see this film. It's 2.5 hours almost. So it's a long one. But if we look at the story, what we are telling, it's a short version of the real story. It's about the 16th Karmapa and Lama Ole Nidal and his wife Hannah Nidal, but also about many other Tibetan lamas. And it's a story of how, we can say a little bit like how this timeless Buddhist wisdom reached the West, how the Karma Kagyu lineage, how this transmission coming from the 16th Karmapa through these two people, and also many other Tibetan lamas as well, as part of a historical movement and shifting of societies, how this arrived to our modern world, we can say, in Western society or modern world, wherever it is, and compared to the Eastern one.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and I can't wait for it to be widely publicly available. I got the pleasure and the honor to screen it myself, and I think Josh did as well.
Yep.
And see it. And it's a very fascinating and very well composed story, just like you say, about how the societal shifts and the historical shifts in Tibet in the 40s and the 50s, very coincidentally and very you might say, fortunately, coincided with shifting in society in Europe and the West. And so Tibetan Buddhism found new life in the West, where it was sort of struggling and dimming in East Asia in a lot of ways due to the invasion of Tibet by the Chinese military and several other factors. And so it's a very wonderful story and it follows very interesting people. And so we're going to spend today talking a little bit about the documentary, how you made it, how you encountered Buddhism, what the story means to you, and certain things like that. So, getting just our introductions straight, would you like to tell us about you, where you're from, how you found Buddhism? That's okay.
Well, I think it's more about the film. I know it's always interesting to hear the people behind, but I must say there are so many people who are behind of this film project. And sometimes
Mhm.
I'm a bit struggling because, of course, I'm the director and producer, but I'm not the only one who made this film possible. So, of course, I just need to say it's a kind of teamwork and different stages of the film were like the developing and producing this film, different people were part of it. And okay, I could have said I held together everything and I'm still doing it and I'm directed and all of it, but really the big attention is on the people who are the contributors, the protagonists, and many who supported in a different ways. So yeah, I mean, I myself, this is my second film, and I'm fascinated always by biographies. This is what I want to say. I'm always fascinated by real, true stories, kind of truth, or to hear or to understand about people's life, how they manage or they don't manage, how they deal with life and challenges. And also being a Buddhist myself, it's inspiring for me. The real, true life stories. This is what actually tells what it means to for myself to live Buddhism. And yeah, this is what is behind what I would like to say.
Fascinating. Yeah, thank you. And you bring up the making of the documentary as well. You know, you bring up how many people were involved, how many places that you had to go, what kind of stuff you had to do, and interesting and wonderful people you had to talk to. So, can you share a little bit about that story? Where did you go? What was your favorite place you went? Who did you talk to?
Well, yeah, so actually, I guess with many documentaries, the case is that you develop the story, but also for that you need a lot of research. And research always starts somewhere in a book or in front of an hour time in front of the computer and finding the right sources. In our case, of course, if you do a story, a life story about someone, like a 16 Kamapa, you need to make sure that you have authentic sources because this is something like everybody can talk about everybody in a way, especially our times, but who knows, yeah, who is the right one. And actually, where we started, we have also call it like a so-called story consultant. This is a Rinpoche, this Lama Jigme Rinpoche, a Tibetan Lama who was the nephew of the 16 Kamapa. And he is also someone who knew him very well. So this is where we started to ask him and clarify with him which life story documents or documentation or books which are authentic. And we were selecting with him or who are the one who can tell about. So that was the first round. So that was quite interesting. And well, it is especially we are talking about someone who not only who passed away, but many people who lived around and with also not around anymore. So that's not that simple. So, but it was really interesting. We put our head into the books and the sources and recordings and then we got the book in Tibetan. That was Jigme Rinpoche gave us a book written by his brother. So Shama Rinpoche, the late Shama Rinpoche, who passed away, who was actually the lineage holder after the Kamapa, student of 16 Kamapa. And Shama Rinpoche wrote a book about the life of 16 Kamapa in Tibetan, first as a form of poetry and then interpretation. And then I got this book from Jigme Rinpoche in Tibetan and he said, this is a very good source. And I'm like, oh, great idea. So it took us like a year to find a translator who dared to start translating it. So this part was quite a journey, just to give a hint. But of course, also then we started to interview people and lamas and also Jigme Rinpoche himself, and it was very interesting to find the people, to tell them about the project. And yeah, we were in Nepal, we were in America. People live everywhere, our times, and in France. And this is how everything started to be developed from this side. And with Lama Ule, it was a little bit easier because he's Westerner and more approachable. And also, actually, we did some interviews with him for the Hana film, and we haven't used a lot of this material because it was the other part of the story. And of course, I knew about it. So that's why I was like, okay, cool, let's grab this interviews, and we transcribed it. And this is how we looked into that. So this is how it started. But the places we went to film in Bhutan, that was very beautiful. It's really nice. It's a kingdom in the Himalayas, and actually, it's still this is a so-called Vajrayana country, and it's also everything preserved in terms of what the Buddhists practice and all the transmission. Very old. It's like goes back to I think like 1,500 years or something. Like some places still there, and one can visit and practice. And this country is magic. So that was really amazing.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I would love to visit Bhutan sometime. I understand it's very difficult, but it's a beautiful place with a beautiful tradition, and I would love to see it. And so you're bringing up Lama Ola and Hannah, and I would like to now get into the content of the documentary and talk about the story that you told. And so the documentary follows magnetic personalities from beginning to end. These wonderful, charismatic people who really are experts at grabbing attention and creating relationships and doing their work, doing their Buddhist work with those relationships. And so I'm curious from your perspective, having told the story of Ola with the Meeting the Buddha documentary, and now telling the story of Hana with the other documentary, what do you think it was about them that made the Karmapa want to take them under his wing and sort of incorporate them into this tradition, even though they were outsiders?
Well, as that sorry to explain it, but clearly from the Buddhist perspective, we say that every meeting and every encounter is somehow connected with from connections from previous lives. It's something, or whatever we do, this is very often, especially if there are like kind of powerful things, they are all fulfilling our old wishes. But of course, what happened here is like a kind of East and West met, and very extreme. It's a little bit like, I don't know if I say extreme characters, but like Lamule and Hannah, they were like part of this hippie generation from Denmark, very strong personalities. And also at the same time, I would think one of the most important characteristics was their strong wish to understand something about the mind, to understand something what is inside. And they were so keen, they were really looking for something. And they were so actually passionate about the freedom of the mind, to bring freedom to the others, to experience freedom. And I think this is what was like the key part of this meeting. And when they met the Kamapa, they could experience that. And actually, I think this energy, I mean, clearly we are all very different, but this energy, what Ole Nydal and Hannah had, this kind of freedom, that also wild aspect, yeah, of their personality. And also sometimes some people said it's kind of this untamed wildness, yeah, especially with Ole. Hannah was very cute, nice person all the time, but Ole was like that. So probably there was something to what can be transformed. This is what is also characteristics of Prajayana, to transform the strong emotions, to transform the strong energies. It sounds maybe a little bit like, oh, something very special, spiritual, but it's more, on the other hand, on the practical level, I think we find it everywhere in the world. Yeah, we know there are qualities, if they are really tamed, they are channeled, or how, I don't know if the right word, then it's just like can be used for the right thing. And probably that was also, this is a ability of a right teacher to see these qualities of the students, what they want also. I don't think that it was something that can come up, I had to convince them very much. It was something what he saw, it's a potential what their wish was, what they would go for, yeah. So Buddhism is a lot, Buddha's teaching are very much connected with the freedom of the mind. And I would say that whoever practice whatever kind of Buddhist teachings, it's always should fit for the person and suit in a way for the tendencies. And I think these tendencies were very well made for that. And probably this is the amazing quality of the realized master, that they can see the potential on the relative level as well, what these people can do. This is how I see, knowing the story now, of course, easier.
Yeah, totally. Josh, did you have any questions?
Yeah, it makes sense what you're talking about there. Like, we've on the show in past episodes, we've talked about how Buddhism really remolds itself to the people practicing. Like, it's a very adaptable religion. And so, yeah, it makes sense that not only did Ole and Hana get welcomed in from that perspective, it also makes sense that like they kind of took things and made their own version of what they were hearing that is also still consistent with what we were talking about. So at this point, I'm going to go and do kind of my role, not my normal role on the show, and just ask some questions about the lineage we're talking about and how all of this ties together. So, in your words, what is the Karma Kagyu lineage, and what is a Karmapa?
Well, the Kamakaju lineage is a transmission lineage. It goes back to the time of Buddha. And since Buddha's time, historically, after Buddha passed away, he taught different ways. And his students put them together in a certain order. This is a big topic. And then it was also practiced, right? And certain kind of transmission was practiced in different part of the world. And this kind of the Vajrayana was practiced also in India for a long time, more secretly, because it was the transmission. The characteristic of the Vajrayana is that it needs a live teacher who can transmit the teaching and the meditation explanations and a direct explanation about the nature of the mind, as they say. And then after 400-500 years, it became more known because it was taken to Tibet. Tibet was quite a wild, they say, barbaric country. And then Buddhism arrived there, and the king and some other supporters started to make it possible that it can be established, also with Guru Rinpoche in the 8th century, and again later on some translators and some others. So different masters took it from India. And this is how people started to practice. And within, in this case, how this transmission appeared, and the Tibetans started to practice this transmission. Among the Tibetans, certain different lineages appeared. And these lineages are actually all, we can say, this is always connected with a kind of some specifics of the transmission, and how is actually the meditation and the teaching is used by the master, which is given to the student. But actually, the goal is always the same, to reach enlightenment. And also, the teachings of Buddha are very much so the same. They don't change. But maybe we can say a little bit what is the approach, how one practices. One goes more in the intellectual way, or one more spends more time with meditation. The understanding, the experience can be approached from different ways. And in the Kamakaju lineage, it's very much specific for the oral transmission. So this way of having a realized master, and the realized master has the responsibility to pass on this understanding and realization to the student. And it's quite a job. It needs always a good teacher and always a good student who can carry on this transmission. And now the Karmapas and the Kamakaju lineage are the first conscious incarnated Lama in Tibet. We say this because now in between everywhere one can hear about it. Tulkus, maybe if one hears about it, but it means also Dalai Lama came later, like it's kind of one incarnation after the other. That the teacher Lama for Kamapa, when after his first incarnation, he gave hints for his next incarnation, so it was easier to find him. It sounds like practical, maybe for some it sounds quite wide, but this is how, just to make sure that the teaching, the transmission goes on, and the core teaching is that authenticity also stays alive. And this incarnated Lama went on first Kamapa, and after, when the first Kamapa was about to pass away, he was meditating and teaching. He gave his teaching and transmission to one person, and this person was the lineage holder until the next Kamapa was born. And this person was also responsible to find and recognize the other next Kamapa. So this is what it went on and on until our time. Does it make sense?
Yes, yes. And that lineage
Yes, it
holder that
does.
you speak of was the Shamarpa, is that right? That
Yes,
role.
yes. Sometimes, sorry, Shamapa, sometimes could be also other Lama. That's why specific I didn't put, because it could be also other Lamas. So in the history, if you go back, and that Kamapa was this person and that person. But Shamapa was a major one from the first incarnation of Shamapa. Yeah, he was very important. Yeah.
That's fascinating. Yeah. And we have talked on the show in the past about these consciously incarnated and reincarnated roles, especially in Tibetan Buddhism. We've mainly talked about it in the context of the Dalai Lama because that's the one that a lot of Westerners know. But there are many others who are said to be reincarnations of bodhisattvas, of past lamas, of even Buddhas. And so it's a very interesting lineage transmission sort of cycle and sort of mechanism to have this teacher-student relationship and emphasize that, but then upon one's death, sort of give hints as to where the unbroken line will continue next. It's an interesting sort of perspective, and it doctrinally and canonically in Tibetan Buddhism, it speaks to these individuals are so enlightened and so empowered by the Dharma that they have the ability to consciously transfer themselves from one body to the next. And it's a very interesting sort of doctrine that we've sort of explored the sources and the texts on the show before. So that'll be familiar to the listeners, and it builds on an interesting conversation that we've already started.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to teachings of Buddha and if also reincarnation. Apparently, we all reincarnate in just not only the tulkus, but the fact to have this ability, as you also mentioned, that one can consciously also decide, because it's very practical in a way. But of course, I just would like to mention that it's just not everything is so perfect, because it sounds like a good concept. I put it in this way, but of course in the medieval Tibet and everywhere it was also always sometimes mixed with politics, and one just needs to know is not everything is so holy, everything is what sounds like. And that's why sometimes some lamas who are also more modern viewed, and they say, maybe this tulku system is just like not so good anymore, because of course always it brings power, and also very often when it's connected with the power, and it is immediately when you have a spiritual let's say authority, yeah, say like this, yeah, then it's just like can be combined with anything else. And so it, of course, that's why the authenticity is very important, and who can recognize and what it brings it up. And just there are some teachers who say actually that okay, one can have a title, yeah, one can have a sign, I'm a tulku of this and that Lama, but actually what really brings to see what this teacher does. So actions, and show what the example they are, how they really live the teaching. So it's always goes back a little bit to this to see what this actually brings, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I find the two-step process there interesting. So you have the Sharmapa who recognizes that next Karmapa, and then the Karmapa recognizes another Sharmapa, and they kind of do this two-step process to make sure that the line is authentic, not broken, and it's the correct line. And in the documentary, it goes into a little bit about a controversy that can come up from that process. So, would you like to talk about your impression of the controversy that arose after the death of the Karmapa in 1981? As I understand it, he kind of named two successors, and that caused some controversy.
Well, the controversies are, I don't think they are planned. I
Yeah, of
don't think they're
course.
engineered.
I don't think many people who are involved in a controversy want to be.
Exactly. But well, I think if you look at historically, just in a wider perspective, I don't know exactly the years or which one, but we had it. It happened again and again, and it's just like one can say it's a controversy, or one can say this is just it is as it is, and it's sometimes you see, we were talking about the past 60 years, or I don't know, like if you go back from the time of the Kamapas exile or the old Tibetan Buddhism exile, I'm talking like this, living back Tibet and all this 800-900 years of tradition suddenly actually, well, sadly, almost disappearing from Tibet. Yeah, so they had to leave the roots back and had to move to another country and reset the whole thing. And let's see how it works. Yeah, we don't know yet how it works. We don't know yet how it's adapting and reaching the whole world. So why I'm saying this, because if one looks back at the history precisely, I just had a very short look of history of Tibet. It's not a funny thing to look at. It was quite sometimes
Right.
wild with politics, these guys like always like just what was in I think everywhere in the world a little bit like, and the Chinese emperor and the Mongols and then the Kublai Khan and everybody with against everyone, and then again this with that one. So it was always something going on. And at that point, because the lamas were powerful and this incarnation system was also a very huge influence on the people, surely it was also used and manipulated, etc. And now in
Yeah.
our time, after the 16th Karmapa died, and then all these things happened. I mean, this is a big, huge topic, and it's also, one can say, it's actually quite sad. On the other hand, this is as it is. We don't know what it brought up. I'm just now saying like that. What is good, what is bad? I mean, the whole Chinese invasion was really, I mean, it is really sad. Yeah, there's so many people
Yeah.
and the whole thing. But as also being a Buddhist or whatever, there's a shifting, there's a changing, there's everything is impermanent, and something old goes, something new happens, some new things appear. And even with this, which was a controversy, now we look at these two Kamapas, they met and they talked about the next incarnation of Tushamapas. So sometimes for us, we are so dualistic, like, and still think of, oh, the good person, bad person. But now suddenly they suppose, and they are just collaborating because they want to keep the transmission alive. This is so beyond our concept sometimes, isn't it? So that's why I'm saying the things are shifting, the things are happening, and sometimes they are challenging. It's sometimes really, really, really unpleasant to experience it, but it brings up something else. And then one can see who practices Dharma and where are politics and where are the games which are always there somehow. This is how I see. I don't know if it makes sense a little bit or.
Definitely,
It
yes.
it
Yeah.
does. We've
Mm.
talked in previous episodes about how a spiritual leader beyond a certain point must it like by default is also a political leader, whether they want to be or not. So as soon as the politics get involved, then that muddies the whole picture and everybody involved is uh getting into things for their own purposes, and it makes the transmission that much more difficult.
Yeah, and also at the same time, these things happening all the time.
Yeah.
And that's why I think what is great with Buddha's teaching, that everybody has to be also think for oneself. Yeah. So it's just like there are cultural things, there are things which is also for some, I mean, it's also for Tibetan things. I totally understand. We are all attached to our roots and to our culture, and it's all of it. But also in terms of Buddhism or what Buddhist practices, they are so clear, the teachings, that one can see what one can follow. And the teachers are also examples. And maybe yeah, some people are more attracted to that, and some people are more attracted to something else, which is also fine. Yeah, this is a freedom in this transmission, and maybe there is some benefits sometimes we discover much later. This is also what I wanted to say. So I don't know. I honestly, I think everybody is the great thing is with the freedom as long we can do that to decide what we would like with our inner life, what we would like to follow or not. This is what we can do, isn't it? And to be critical as well and ask questions, looking at it, and I don't know. I think this is important.
It definitely is, and I agree with what you're saying about how the timeline of this and the moves that are being made are sort of beyond our comprehension and beyond the context of just our individual lives. You know, when we speak about controversy, whether we're talking about 1981 or any other episode in Buddhist history, in Tibetan history, the truth is that most of the so-called controversy lies in the minds of lay people, outsiders, and perhaps even followers, right? But like you say, the two different people who were named lineage holders, they collaborate and they're on good terms with each other. So there's not really a big dramatic split for them. They are perfectly happy to work together to maintain the transmission and maintain the health and the prosperity of the followers of their lineage. So these sort of things, we have to speak about them because people feel strongly, but we also recognize that sometimes it sort of spirals into something that it's not in the perceptions of people who aren't involved and people who aren't very close to it and stuff, right? So we might from the outside see, oh, this is a big deal. This is a huge problem. This is a serious thing. But then the people inside are perfectly content and perfectly peaceful and entirely okay. So, that's something that we've encountered looking into all sorts of different episodes in Buddhist history. So that definitely reflects here. And so the next thing that I wanted to discuss is that we bring up the sort of historical context and this outside context a lot as we're discussing this story. And so obviously this documentary tells the story of Tibetan Buddhism and of European culture and subculture and counterculture together at a very fast moving, fast changing point in 20th century history. The 1940s through the 1960s were very, very fast changing, fast moving for Asia and for Europe. And so these things that have happened in the context of World War II and of the Chinese invasion of Tibet and beat culture and hippie culture in Europe. And so I'm just curious what your impression or your description of the historical significance of those 2 decades is with regards to this story. To ask it in a more simple way, like what is the significance of the story to you given the historical context of what's going on in these two decades?
I think it's a lot going on, of course, always, but it was an interesting time, and in the Western society, that also freedom, I mean, through the Beat generation, through the hippie generation, became kind of a different kind of freedom, important topic in the materialistic life. We know it from America, but also, I guess, in Europe, and like just to break through, and not only just to have a car and a vacuum cleaner and a wife at home who cooks, all of it, the 50s, 60s. So just like everybody was happy. But then it's a huge topic. I think it's totally inspiring to look at this through the music, through art, through everything, what came out. This kind of breakthrough and maybe even the psychedelics, which I don't have so much experience myself, but I think I can understand and what I can see that generation and not now, but back then it was about expanding and getting rid of the limitation and the rigid concepts, etc. So it was very interesting, amazing music we all know and still listen to. So it was quite of a breaking through thing, and that's why this generation also went to the East. We know not only I mean, Beatles went to the East, and a lot of them like wanted to find some teaching and something about the mind and other things. So I think it was an interesting time, and I think this generation did a great job. I think I'm pretty sure they did for us to remove some rigidness which we take so granted maybe our time, and of course we complain, but we take it granted. And it was an interesting time. At the same time, also being myself from Eastern Europe, I mean, this is also we are also talking about the European part, the limitation of the communism, like back then, and the Eastern European bloc wasn't funny at all, as well. So that was also something like breaking through, and this is also just like some shifting later on, not only 50s, 60s, 70s, and then the 80s, end of 80s. So it's a lot. I think it's very interesting to see how the different societies are like also kind of because of the circumstances, and of course maybe the evolution of our modern society, so much possible that one can work with the mind. Is not only about surviving, getting enough food, but one can think abstract. One can also think about other things than the materialistic level. So I think it's pretty cool to get there and to have this also. Now we have a podcast about Buddhism, and it's not only because it's a religion, and not that everybody should become a Buddhist, but what a cool opportunity that one can hear other views, other values. One has a chance to a little bit contemplate. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's
Oh,
been one of my favorite aspects of doing this show is looking into those different mindsets.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And this is I mean, imagine. I mean, I think the Beat Generation, everything what they did, Jack Kerouac. I mean, it's amazing, right? What these guys, it was revolutionary. Like what for us is so normal. It's I don't know, how can be revolutionary, but also just being able to do that. Yeah, just that it's so good to have this. This is something amazing. Yeah. And this is also why I would say it's so connected to Buddha's teaching, because Buddha's teaching us that the aim is to set free and to be able to breathe and to have some distance of what we are going through.
absolutely, yeah. And one thing that I was very struck by in the documentary that it just fascinated me to see was that Ola and Hannah were able to drive straight from Denmark through Russia, Afghanistan, into Nepal. I mean, that's something that I couldn't even imagine today, right? I mean, the opportunity that you're talking about for the breaking through and the spread of Buddhism, there were some really uniquely amazing and fortuitous circumstances back then, and we are so lucky that they did happen, or else we might not have Buddhism to talk about on this show today, and we might not be able to explore something as interesting as Buddhism and be able to talk about it and read about it and learn about it, and then for many people also practice it in the West. And so it was a very interesting and wonderful episode in history to see that they could go back and forth that way and travel sort of maybe not so safely, but freely. Freely, as
Yeah,
you
but
say.
also, I mean, imagine I was talking to one lady interviewing, she's also in the film, Helen. I mean, we are doing everything with our smartphone now. I mean, everybody knows that the generation doesn't know what was before internet, but back then to manage this and organize it and get through those countries, like, and it was quite an adventure, because if you get lost in Afghanistan, then you have to figure out, yeah, and or I don't know where, and the car stops, and of course, they took more time, and also they were not rich, so they all came from like a background, academic family, and very well learned, but not rich
Mhm.
ish. And but still, they collected the money and they managed. And it's really cool, because it's really, they didn't do it one time only. Of course, in the film we always had to short down the story, because they went back and forwards, and they went like this and again, and they hitchhiked. So they did a lot of things. It's yeah, and it took a long time. And this woman told us it was like incredible, because, for example, Ole and Björn, they just bought a bus, and they bought a bus for the people, for 70 people, and they smuggled people. They were people who had no visa, or Ole was doing himself a visa. I mean, just like white stories. So it was possible. But that was the generation, isn't it? That was really different kind of.
Different times.
different times. Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes it was very dangerous. I mean, there's the part of the story where they actually did get kidnapped in South America, and it's super fascinating to see. Even though they got kidnapped, by all accounts, all the people that were interviewed, they said that Ola didn't change. He was still in teaching Buddhism mode, even as they were under fire, and he wrote the Mahamudra book under gunpoint, essentially, and that's very fascinating to hear about. I mean, that speaks to a certain, how would you say, it speaks to a certain resilience of mind and a certain focus that I wish that many of us had.
Yeah, that is quite really, it's really cool. And that was, of course, again, this ability of Ulan Hana, what also really inspired me and inspires me, that reaching the people. Because, it's like with different societies, I'm sure you guys also know that we are not only different, the culture, but the societies are, Latin America is so different. Among them, the countries are
Yeah.
so very different. And America is different, within Europe, of course. And one needs to respect it. Yeah, it's just not like this is good or bad, we all know that, but just to understand and reach the people and touch them, their lives, in a way that one can help them. And this is so amazing because they managed this and they got it through these experiences. And this is what I said very often. Of course, we couldn't use it, just shortened down, but in the interview, he said, in Colombia back then, or even in Peru, I think he was talking about Colombia for a while. He said it was so incredible because the people, every family had someone who was killed or kidnapped. And you guys, you don't know what it means. What it means when you're always facing impermanence and you always, then there is no time to games. Then he said it's just like life is too short for games, and you don't do the games because it's a different dimension suddenly. So it's also interesting from this perspective, yeah.
Yeah, it's very fascinating. I mean, it's a context that so many of us we don't even remotely understand, and we're privileged to not understand it. But then at the same time, like you say, they are very much aware of impermanence, and they're very much faced with perhaps also a need to find some sort of fulfillment spiritually that makes that circumstance perhaps less terrible and less heart crushing and less soul crushing than it actually is in some ways. And so, like you say, that speaks to the ability of reaching the people, and that's something that Buddhism has done throughout all of its history. In many ways, is reach the people. I mean, we spoke earlier in the episode about how it adapts and changes, and it's sort of molded to the different circumstances, cultures, and societies of different peoples as it travels. And that's one of the fascinating things for us to study and explore on this show. And so, as we are sort of winding down near to perhaps the end of the episode, I just wanted to ask, what difficulties did you face making the documentary? What was the hardest part or the most challenging part for you?
Oh, for this, I would need an extra podcast sessions. Like,
I know that feeling.
I like always the question, what is the most difficult? And I'm just like, I could give you 15, but okay, let me not do that. It's always changing, what was one day, this is difficult. I mean, it's a lot. It's still a kind of low budget project, and it's a small team, does a lot of things. It's a lot of work and all these researches. And I mean, editing to put the thing together. I mean, we had a 10 hours cut that was already, I did a pre-cut of the film in 10 hours, and then we took this 10-hour cut to London and just editing down. So we have a long story. It's much more to tell. It was really, really hard to bring it down, especially so many interesting stories, which it's good to share in connection with it. So this part, it was challenging, I must say. Filmings always bring their own beautiful challenges in life, and when the luggage doesn't arrive and you are middle of Sikkim, somewhere northern, like at the Himalayas, and we just made a microphone with a bamboo stick and something else from old fashioned. The cameraman, amazing, came from Holland, and he brought the most amazing newest whatever sound system. and the airplane, and then we were there doing a interview with iPhone and this bamboo stick, and I mean it's
Wow.
always interesting, yeah. So like you are suddenly there and you have to improvise and make it work. So later on it's a good story, but at the moment there were moments.
I'm sure. Yeah. In America, the expression that is commonly used for situations like that is to MacGyver something. There's the
Yeah.
old television show MacGyver where he used to put stuff together out of rubber bands and paper clips and stuff. And yeah, and so we say, whenever you put the iPhone on the bamboo stick for the interview, that's the MacGyver solution.
Yeah, exactly. But good to have iPhone in a way. So yeah, it of course it's a lot of it's documentaries. I think everyone who and filmmakers, film people who do this, it's always a passion. It's always something which I think with creatives and I guess also you guys, it's something when one goes for it and loves it, and this always has its price. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of 12, 14 hours, and yeah. So, but I think it's an amazing thing, and actually, I'm very thankful for having so many people who contributed. I really must say, great co-writers and also producers and everyone who and translators. We had people who transcribe. So it's really a huge, huge work. A lot of people participated, but also translating from Tibetan, it's really, really challenging. This language is amazing, and especially they say it's like to translate this. It's because it's about teaching. One needs to kind of understand the meaning. So it's not only one needs to be a practitioner. One needs to understand. It's not only the language. So that was quite to find the good translators and back and forward what it means, a description. So different masters speak different dialects and different things. So great people we interviewed. Also, some of them they passed away. So it's also interesting working on a documentary, yeah, because you see, oh, how good we did this interview back then, because this old guy who was amazing thing, but he just passed away 3 months later. Or so this is also a very interesting part of it, yeah.
Absolutely.
So let's flip it a little bit. We were talking about what are the difficulties you faced, but let's flip that around. What was part of this was your favorite part? What was your favorite part of making this documentary?
You see, I think again, I had different phases, had this day favorite part. I really love the interviewing, the filming. It's very interesting what you guys do now with me. A little bit asking questions. It's really amazing. It's very inspiring, actually, interests me totally. I loved it and amazing, amazing stories. So that's this I loved very much to hear to details and ask and understand one more puzzle, one more thing. I didn't, this is a new perspective. So this I loved very much. And of course, meeting these contributors all around the world and also these great teachers and interviewing Ule and interviewing Jigme Rinpoche and finding archive. I mean, it's amazing to find suddenly beautiful. Suddenly you said you don't have, and you find not only sound, but you find in with video. So this, it's also a little bit like digging, finding great archive is like a treasure hunting. Yeah, this is also cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, that's been a fun part of like just doing this right now, that seeking of knowledge from other people, figuring out their perspectives, going over experiences. Like that's just a fun thing to do. So now we're on that side of that ourselves, and it's just, this is cool.
You feel
Very
like a
cool.
detective, right? I mean, you feel
Yeah.
like, it's not a crime scene, but you feel like, there's something here with clues and with some secret hidden piece, that lies in the past. And, you get to search for that. And when you find that piece that makes the present make sense, suddenly it's like, wow, eureka, and
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah,
joy of this
you need
stuff.
to ask the good questions, isn't it, guys? Good questions, which touches people, moves people, make people cry. This is the
Yes.
thing. And it's really like, but I think it's always probably if there's a genuine interest, which I'm sure that's why it works. And from my side also, when I'm there, I'm lost. That's why it's so tiring. I'm there, and sometimes an interview can last 20 minutes, or well, sometimes we had 8 hours. So it's a lot. So, but this is what we do.
This is what
Yeah.
we do exactly. And so, speaking about 8-hour interviews, I certainly don't want to keep you for 8 hours. And so the last thing that I would like to ask is what's next? Would you like to
I
talk
don't know.
about the documentary Hannah that's going through the festivals now?
No, Hannah was the first. This is the second.
Oh, I see. I see.
I think somehow you swapped. Hannah was already done, finished in 2014.
Oh, I
And this
see.
Meeting the Buddha is the film now.
Gotcha. I see. I see. So I thought that Meeting the Buddha was finished and that Hannah was in the making.
No, Meeting the Buddha is in the making. But Meeting the Buddha also finished. Also, Hannah is finished, but Meeting the Buddha is running now through the festivals.
Fascinating. Fascinating. And so we hope that we get to have a screening here in Seattle pretty soon. Maybe that'll happen. Maybe it won't. We'll do everything we can to make it work. That would be super exciting for an opportunity to screen that for a larger audience and to see that.
Yeah, I really hope I will let you know, guys. The next screening will be in Los Angeles, which I'm pretty excited about, in Santa Monica. And there's a theater, so it's very well known. I just forgot the name. Too bad.
That's the Laimle Monica Film Center.
But it's really cool. So it will be a West Coast premiere in October 26th. It's not so difficult to find out. And yeah, everybody, please find us, guys. We are on Instagram, Facebook, even Facebook. Some people are still on Facebook. And we have a website and yeah, so looking forward and hope to see you, everyone. And thank you so much. It was very interesting. It's a great podcast. I also will share it, and good to hear what you're doing, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Yeah, thank you for coming on and discussing your interesting documentary story and telling us all the juicy details and all the interesting stuff that makes us all excited about this material. Anything else that we need to get on the recording before we hit stop?
Well,
Thank
we
you, everyone. Yeah.
didn't really get an answer to that last question because we messed up about the documentary about Hana, but what's next for you? Like what's coming up in your future? Don't know?
I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
in my crystal ball, I'd really, really, really try to be more here and now. It's so much going on in here and now that I really try to chill on that.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's probably the
You know
wise
what
way
I
to
mean?
do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So this is also something. But yeah, let's see, isn't it? I mean, of course, I think we all do, we can give a kind of direction of what's coming, but isn't it also nice just to be surprised and see what comes? Also cool.
Sometimes it's nice, sometimes it's terrifying, but that's how life is. So
Yeah, but
cool.
after a big project like this, finishing a big project when you just live from one deadline to next deadline and you just go like, oh, it's so
Oh
nice just
yeah.
to see what happens next.
Yeah, I
You're
have
ready to
been
just go
there.
with the flow.
Exactly. I didn't want you to say that. Everybody says that.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway, thank you, guys. So
Thank you.
it was fun. And thank you, everybody.
Yes, thank you everybody for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode with Marta Gyoergy-Kessler about meeting the Buddha and a little bit about Hana as well. And we'll see you next time. Thanks very much for listening.
If you like our show and want to support us financially, we ask that you send that generosity to people in need. For now, we recommend you support World Central Kitchen, an organization that works to feed communities in times of crisis. Right now, they are active in many areas, supporting people in the path of wildfires in America, in the wake of the earthquake in Afghanistan, Ukrainians fighting off foreign occupiers, and relieving the weaponized famine happening in Gaza. If you have the means, please join us in supporting their good work.
My name is Nick Bright, scholar of East Asian religions and the voice of Hearer.
And I'm Docs, editor, question asker, and voice of Hermit.
And this has been Bright on Buddhism. Thank you for listening. If you like our podcast, or if you have any questions that you'd like us to discuss, we'd love to hear from you. Please consider leaving a comment, review, or subscribing. You can also reach us by email at bright.on.buddhism@gmail.com. As always, citations and resources for this episode can be found in the show notes. Thank you.